Locked On. I'm your host, Tanitra Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst Deshaun Tate. The Hawks Postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. So Jaylen Brown's return home to Atlanta was actually better than his host. We'll discuss and we'll give you our take on how things turned on a dime for the Hawks in their 132-106 loss to the Boston Celtics tonight. And Tate, you said your take was that Boston proved that there's levels to this.
That they did, Tanisha. And I think that there's, between both of these franchises that for whatever reason, I don't know if I go all into intense rivalries and all of that kind of stuff. It's not Boston and LA, but the Hawks in Boston typically does have some pretty hard fought battles between one another and all of these different. Tonight wasn't that. I think that that's like, okay, I get it. Duh. Anybody that watched the game definitely felt that way. Clearly this thing was over in a hurry, but I just think that hopefully if there's anything that Atlanta can take away from this is that they're kind of seeing how a well-oiled machine is run. The only thing I kept hearing coming into the season was about how much more Atlanta would be able to compete and contend in the East. A major reason why is because Halliburton is not going to be playing in Indy, because Tatum is not going to be playing in Boston, and people completely forgetting about Jaylen Brown for some reason, almost as if he absolutely had to have Tatum to be for this team to be successful. And I think that a lesson was just kind of learned on that, as it has so far already this season. I mean, they've just gotten beaten all across the board, and looking at the numbers, some people will go back and look at some of the stat lines and so forth to figure, oh, well, this couldn't have been that bad, but it was a lot worse. Everybody talks about how games just does not, and should the final score does not show indication of exactly how the game actually went. This is just another example of that. The stat sheet definitely does not do any justice to exactly what happened. The Hawks clearly got the brakes beat off of them from every facet, every level of this game, and in most cases, I like to think sometimes that that's a good thing. I'm just not so sure that that's such a great thing. By the way, this also goes back into that narrative about people feeling like that the Hawks would be so much better without Trae Young on the floor. I definitely want to wake that up too.
Okay, well, you can't wake that one up without giving that a qualifier. So do tell.
Well, I feel like in such situations as this, where we've been talking about time after time where the team have been playing so well without Trae. And it's like, oh, well, there's been this narrative about how much better they play all the time without Trae. And this isn't just about tonight. This goes back to Portland. This has been going back to probably about the last few weeks or so. I don't feel like that's been the case. This is just another prime example of that. I don't think with Dyson Daniels or with Trae Young or with Kristaps Porzingis per se that they were necessarily going to win this game, especially the way that they played or that Boston played on tonight, because it felt like they couldn't miss a shot. But this is just another part of that example. Without Trae Young being in a Hawks uniform, it doesn't feel like it's going to get better. And we'll talk about another reason why I feel that way a little bit later when we talk about somebody else.
Yeah, understood. And I just wanted to clarify it because there are layers and levels to that as well. That's a very nuanced conversation where people would throw out, oh, Trae Young, look how much better the Hawks did without him. But there are levels to, you got to think about the competition, and you got to think about matchups, and you have to think about who else might have been in the lineup or out of the lineup in those cases. Or in this case, you talk about the West Coast trip and kind of how it ended. And yeah, there are just always so many things. And I think you make a great point too. Earlier, you mentioned that when it comes to the Celtics, everybody just kind of thought, oh, wow, no Jason Tatum. This team is probably playing at best. They're right there behind the Detroit Pistons. They're just 4 games out of first place in the Eastern Conference. And there's something to be said about a championship mentality. And they're just about 8.5 games out of first place overall in the league, of course, behind Oklahoma City, amongst other teams. And the reason I mention that is because I think you make a great point about reports of the death of the Seas were overrated, exaggerated, and came way too soon. And I think that with that in mind, it's like you can't underestimate sort of the importance of the other players, right?
Mhm.
And what do they bring to the table? And that's kind of the take I had tonight. It's like, okay, the Hawks were kind of still in Portland, somewhere still on the West Coast at tip off, because Jalen Johnson would be your guy. Trae Young obviously was your guy, but now he's gone. So now you have a Jalen Johnson, and it's like, okay, where's everybody else? Because if Jalen has another night like what we saw tonight, then the expectation is that everybody else steps up, right? And when you look at the Boston Celtics, this has been consistent for them. That's why they're in second place in the Eastern Conference, because everybody knew in the absence of Jason Tatum, yes, Jaylen Brown could handle it and handle himself very, very well. And obviously, he scored 41 tonight, but they know others can pick up the pace. Sam Hauser with a magnificent game from 3 tonight, 30 points. And you just kind of look across the board, and even they got Anthony Simons off the bench. He was the next scorer in line along with Quetta at 14. So my thing is, with that team, everybody else came to play.
Yeah.
All the way down the rotation.
Point. That's a good point.
Where was the help for the Hawks? If Jalen Johnson is off like he was tonight, and Onyeka Okongwu, obviously 21 points, that's fine. But where else did the help come from? I'm looking up and down this box score and its stat line, and like you said, even the numbers don't give a good idea of what happened tonight, because I feel like a lot of those were garbage points, if we're being honest.
Correct.
What happened in the second quarter, for example? Because Hawks, you outscored the Boston Celtics 32-50 in the fourth quarter, but you got blown out 52-28 in the second quarter when it mattered. Where was everybody? So that to me was the disappointment. I honestly felt like in the arena, I did not see any fight. Like the first quarter, I felt like it was close because both teams were just trading buckets. But in the second quarter, the Hawks started off with a little bit of perimeter defense, and we will definitely honor the fact that you got no Dyson Daniels, so that takes a lot away from what you're able to do defensively. You got no Kristaps Porzingis, which obviously he probably would have had a little bit of a better chance to play well against his former team, and just because of the girth that he brings to the table. Yeah, exactly. So hey, I take nothing away from the fact that there were two critical players not on that court tonight, but you also knew that going into the game. And so where was the adjustment for the players in terms of touching down, tipping off, and saying we're finally back home, let's make something happen here? Didn't see
and it just doesn't feel like it's going to get better sometimes anytime soon, because as good as it would be for, and I know I keep saying this over and over every show, but as good as it typically you would think that it would be for a team that played so many games on the road and did so well in them, you can only think and imagine that, okay, now we're going to have a good bulk of the remaining games of the season that are going to be at home, a good portion of those, and against beatable teams. This is going to go pretty well. But for whatever reason, at State Farm Arena, we just haven't been seeing that happen. And it's not just about the wins and losses. Sometimes it's like, okay, I can learn how to live with losses against a Boston team who's still really freaking good, who construct their roster the ways that they do and have a superstar player the way that superstar player the way that they do in a Jaylen Brown, and just the success. They know how to win. They have that culture. They have that, what did you say, championship mentality. Like they have the know-how that the Hawks don't have. I can still learn to deal with losses. But 132-106, and that's generous. Like I look up and they're down by 40 and there's still a lot of time left to go. And all the players are kind of looking at their imaginary watches and saying, oh my God, we still have another quarter left to play. Oh my God, I can't deal with it much longer. We still have another half of the quarter, final quarter left to play. All these different things. I don't know if it's about sleepwalking or just whatever. I'm not going to go that far, but knowingly they knew who was going to be playing and who was not going to be playing. I don't want to hear anything about a back-to-back or any of that. It's just wake-up call time, and I think it's pretty clear that the next step is to get some help in the front court.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. The front court is indeed in need of help because right now you're just not getting what you need. You're getting a solid from Onyeka Okongwu, right? So got to give him, a lot of credit in what he's been able to do. Jalen Johnson, we'll talk
I
about
agree.
him, like you said, in a little while. But tonight, hey, with being down Dyson Daniels and no Kristaps Porzingis, then you kind of see Quinn Snyder go to sort of a smaller lineup with Nickeil Alexander-Walker,
Hmm.
CJ McCollum, and Beat Krejci.
Muhammad Gay at the center position. How about that, Tanisha?
Right. Yeah, but I was thinking, yeah, and then you go with the three guards to start, and that just to me speaks volumes. And like you said, Moge at center just speaks volumes about what this team does not have, what this team is missing more in the front court than anything, which also speaks to it really only the departure of Trae Young was just the tipping point.
Good point.
Anyway, at the end of the day, the other tipping point is if you let that team over there, that one that came in from up top, score double, almost triple the percent of what they did in one quarter in the very next, that's probably going to be the turning point in the game. We'll discuss. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays are already feeling different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during happy hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises, and it adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by Game Time. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets fast, simple, and without the guesswork. So browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Features like zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value. And whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. So first quarter, Hawks are in this thing, no problem in terms of being competitive, so to speak. Hawks are just down 30-23. So nothing to be alarmed about as it stood, because also you had the Boston Celtics. On some level, it was the Celtics not being able to execute from the perimeter. But on the same token, it was the Hawks, we'll give them some credit, being able to play a little bit of decent perimeter defense. However, the second quarter was a totally different animal. The C's go from shooting 33% from beyond the arc to a whopping 73%. And Deshaun, that was the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Yeah, I don't know any scenario in which a team shoots 73% from three and almost doubles you up, outscoring the Hawks 52-28. I don't know many scenarios where you come back from that.
I can't say that I know many scenarios either, Tanisha. The craziest part about that is when they kind of got off to that kind of Boston kind of got off to that start and that run, as good and great of course, first quarter, but second quarter that Jaylen Brown had, it wasn't even about him that kind of ignited that. If anything else, I guess maybe he started a lot of that in the first quarter where, he scored like 18 of the team's, 23 points or whatever the case was.
Yep.
But Sam Hauser almost went for a record from 3 on tonight. I think he went for 30, all threes, I think. Also starting that was Anthony Simons coming off the bench, playing really well, shooting from 3. I think he scored probably like 3 of the team's first 6 in that second quarter. Sam Hauser came out with another 2. I mean, they just went up to a whole different level. Hawks not getting stops. That's tough. We all know what everything has a start for the Hawks with defense. They can't position themselves to where they can keep up with other teams by putting the ball in the basket. I don't care how efficient they are, one of the better ones in the NBA from 3 and everything else.
But wait, Deshaun, but they're not. Their percentage is worse than the Hawks from 3.
No, I was talking. No, that's what I was talking,
I was talking about the Hawks. Okay, I'm like, wait a minute. I thought I heard you say Celtics. Go ahead.
Yeah,
go
no, and the thing is that like I feel like the Atlanta Hawks, it has to start with, they don't have the kind of offensive firepower consistently. I get it. You want to rely. We talked about this the other day about how much they want to rely on 3-point shots. You go look at their roster. There's not many guys, maybe one, that's not a pretty good 3-point shooter that I have confidence that I won't hold my breath when he puts one up. Where was that at tonight? Couldn't tell you. But no matter what, they're not the type of team or have the kind of roster that's constructed that it's like, you know what? I don't care. It doesn't matter as long as we have the ball in the last possession at the end of the game. I'm confident that we're going to have more. We're going to beat teams by having more points at the end of the game. They're not the Los Angeles Clippers. They're not going to be able to do that. They have to rely on getting stops. That was something in that span, especially in the second quarter, that they just weren't able to do.
Yeah. And I felt like there were moments where there were contested shots, but not enough, right? From 3, because there was 1 3, it was like maybe left corner. And my head was down, right? Because I was just taking notes. And then I looked up and I asked one of our colleagues, like, hey, did you see that? Was that contested or not? And he said, yeah, it was contested. But Deshaun, it got to a point where the contesting wasn't really contesting, if you will. It wasn't consistent enough. So Boston just kept doing what they do. Barrage of threes. Like, we're just going to keep coming because there just wasn't the consistency. And like you said, the Hawks aren't necessarily in a position to be able to outshoot or outscore anybody, because on the flip side, even in the quarter where the Celtics were not their most effective from 3, which was that first quarter where they only shot 33%, but the Hawks only shot 29% from 3. So it's like, okay, when you can kind of keep them down, that's something like, even, when the Hawks shot 42% in the second quarter from 3. Yeah. When you're out there shooting 73%, Boston, doesn't matter. And then they go back to kind of fall back to earth in the third quarter. They shoot 25% from 3, and then they shoot 36%. So it was kind of like that up and down. And one of the things that I saw as well, Deshaun, that kind of concerned me, and I'll switch out of this real quick because I know we want to just touch on one thing, but and hey, we see Freddie, it's Fred IYP. I don't know how to pronounce that, but just pop that up and that'll get me switching gears. But one other thing that, was just disappointing was when everybody saw the Boston Celtics constantly collapsing the paint to ensure that Jalen Johnson wasn't going to get a shot off or wasn't going to get a quality shot off. It was very disappointing to see him fighting for his life, trying to kick the ball out, trying to do something, and nobody was there to give him any help. And like Fred said, 3 games in a row, 15 points from Jalen. We don't want to get overly concerned, and we want it to be an overreaction, but it is a little bit disconcerting to see the games that Jalen has had these last 3 outings.
I'll just say that that's what's the painful part, why you love so much of what he was teasing you with, and not just teasing you with, but giving you consistently, not just showing flashes, but giving you on a
Yes.
consistent level. I mean, he's still the second leader in double doubles and number one in the league with over 340, defensive rebounds and all these other things. I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think that's great for this league and the franchise and all the other cute stuff that goes with it. But situations like this kind of brings you back down to earth, if you will, to a degree. And it's really hard to see these type of performances from Jalen. I'm just being completely honest,
Yeah.
without thinking about you're next up. You are the guy. You are the one now that's going to be faced with all the things that Trey was faced with. It's hard not to think about what he just through success, though, not through anything else, through success. But what's to come with that is going to be some pressure and other things. Can he handle it? I don't know. Hope that he can. But he's got his work cut out for him. But on the trajectory that I still believe that he's on, because we gave other guys grace during their moments.
Sure.
I like to think that he'll be just fine. I just hope it doesn't last too long.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point, because obviously I've always wanted them to bubble wrap him the entire season. So hopefully it's not physical. I'd rather it be mental, because that's something that is a far easier reset, especially for Jalen Johnson, than a reset that's physical. Well, hopefully Jalen and the Hawks will reset for a big matchup and a big showdown against the Bucks Monday. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game, and is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So remember, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.